Hello and welcome to the very first Pubcast of Topeka High. And this is Futbol or Futbol, where we talk about sports with all kinds of balls. So today in our first episode, we're going to be recapping the NFL Combine and who really caught my eye at each position. Let's get into it. So we're going to start off with day one, and we're going to start with the halfbacks and the offensive linemen. So there were two halfbacks that really caught my attention. Number one was Justice Hill from Oklahoma State. He ran a 4.40, which was the fastest out of all the halfbacks. Had 21 reps, which isn't the greatest, but for a fast running back, it's still pretty good. He had the highest vertical jump at 40, which is really good for as small as he is. He had a 130-inch broad, which was number one again, but he didn't run the cone. But overall, he moved really well, and I think he raised his draft stock by quite a bit with how he performed. There was another halfback that really caught my attention who isn't really projected to go that high. It was Alex Barnes out of K-State. He ran a 4.59, which really isn't the greatest. But he had 34 reps, which was the most out of all the running backs. Now, if you're a K-State fan, you know he has this type of power. He had a 38.5 vertical, which was third, again, very good, and 126 broad, which was fifth overall, which was pretty good. I think he raised his stock by quite a bit. I think he'll be a really good third down blocking running back. Almost, he could be used as a fullback. I feel like he's strong enough, he's big enough to where I feel like he could be a really good third down back or a fullback. Offensive lineman Juwan Taylor was really good. He didn't run much, but he looked really good. He moved good. And really, he should be considered one of the top linemen in the class by far. I feel like there's a lot of good offensive linemen. Obviously, can't compare to last year with Quentin Nelson and obviously some of the other guys. But I still feel like this is a pretty solid offensive lineman class, and you should see a few be going in the first round. All right, so that was day one. You just had the halfbacks and the offensive linemen. Let's move on to day two. Now we're on day two, and you had three possessions go this day. With the quarterbacks, Kyler Murray was the talk, obviously. He didn't even work out, but he was 5'10", 207 pounds. I don't know what to think. He's got a good arm. He's fast. We know that, even though he didn't work out. Some people say that he's going to go number one. I'm still skeptical, I'll be honest, but the Cardinals having Josh Rosen, not willing to trade him yet. I don't know. I still feel like there's a lot of room for him. Maybe not to improve, but to really get the attention, as some people, obviously he got the attention with the 5'10", 207. But it's still hard to say where he'll go. People are starting to think that he'll go number one. I'm still skeptical about it, but we'll see. Drew Lock from Missouri looked really good. He ran a 4.59. He threw well. He looked comfortable. And it's hard to say what will happen with the rest of the quarterbacks in the class because it's all going to depend where Murray goes. I still think the Giants, they're going to take Dwayne Haskins at number 6. I don't think there's a question about that. He's their guy. But after that, you've got teams like the Dolphins, like the Redskins, who need a quarterback. Even though the Redskins just traded for Case Keenum, he's not going to be their starter. Come on. And there's room to see what happens with quarterbacks like Drew Lock, like Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray. We don't know. If Kyler Murray doesn't go number one, where's he going to go? We don't really know. So we move on to wide receivers, and man, DK Metcalf from Ole Miss put on a show. So he measured in 6'3", 228 pounds. Yeah, he's enormous. He's like Julio Jones. Ran a 4.33. That's insane. For a wide receiver of that size? Come on, that's ridiculous. He had 27 reps, which is still good. He had a 40.5 vert. 45. Not 45 inches, but 40.5. A 134 broad. I mean, he looked unbelievably good. He had good hands. He just killed the gauntlet. I got to look at the wide receivers now. We all thought that Marquise Goodwin was probably going to go ahead of him before this. Obviously, Goodwin didn't work out and won't work out at his pro day. I think Metcalf is in that conversation for possibly top 10 with the workout that he put on. It was ridiculous. I think he has to be the top receiver in this class now. Goodwin doesn't have anything on him anymore. Goodwin's fast. Yes, we know he's a good receiver, but he has injury issues. He doesn't remind me of John Ross very much, but he's got that injury and he's fast. I don't know. I think Metcalf has to be considered the top receiver in this class now. I think there's no question. I think he'll probably go ahead of Goodwin for top wide receiver. So we move on to tight ends. Apparently, Iowa produces some really good tight ends. TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant. Hawkinson is still projected to be the top tight end in the class, and he obviously deserves that title. But Noah Fant was unbelievably good. He ran the fastest 40 out of the tight ends at 4.5, 20 reps, almost a 40 vertical, and a 127 broad. He looked really good again. Obviously, Hawkinson is still going to be that number one tight end in the class. But I got to look at Fant now going possibly late first round. I think he's going to be a solid tight end. He doesn't remind me of Travis Kelce, but he reminds me of a tight end who is more of a glorified receiver. You know, he's big enough to block, but he's also fast enough to where linebackers and some safeties might not be able to cover him, and he's big enough. I don't know. It's hard to say. Hawkinson will still be the first tight end taken, but Fant possibly could now skyrocket himself into the late first round. This is where we get to some of the most stat classes we've seen this year. Edge rushers, man. I mean, you got people like Josh Allen, but Montez Sweat, probably one of the top two performers at the combine, right behind DK Metcalf. 4.41. That's unbelievable for an edge rusher. His explosiveness is ridiculous. He had 21 reps, isn't the best for an edge rusher, but still, he's strong, he's fast. 36 vert, 125 broad. I'd say he skyrocketed into at least the top 15, if not the top 10. I think he has to be considered as one of the top edge rushers of the draft this year. We go to defensive linemen. I'm going to talk about Nick Bosa. He didn't have the best workout. He ran a 4.78, isn't the greatest, and he knew it wasn't. 29 reps, 33.5 for 116 broad, but I still think he moved good. I still personally think he's got to be the top prospect in this draft. If I were the Cardinals, I'd still be taking him at number 1. Obviously, I'm not the Cardinals, though, and they'll probably take Kyler Murray. But I still see Nick Bosa as the number 1 pick in this draft. I really do. Another defensive lineman that I won't talk about much, Quinnen Williams. He looked good. He really he solidified himself as a top 5 pick for sure. Now, linebackers isn't the deepest position in this draft, but Devin Bush and Devin White from, let's see here. So White ran a 4.42, really good, and Bush ran a 4.43, both unbelievably good. Top 2. White had 22 reps while Bush had 21. Bush had a 40.5 vert while White had a 39.5 and a 124 broad for Bush and a 118 for White. It's hard to tell which one will go first at this rate. They both seem really evenly matched. Either way, you're going to get yourself a solid linebacker in both of them. I still think Devin White will go ahead of Bush, but I think it might depend on what happens at their pro days. I think they both looked really, really good. I still think either way, you're going to get a solid linebacker with whoever you take. Day of the combine, we had quarterbacks and safeties, all defensive backs going today. So at the cornerback position, obviously the top 3, Greedy Williams, DeAndre Baker, and Byron Murphy. They all worked out really well. Greedy ran fast, Baker and Murphy moved well. It's hard to tell. I think Greedy Williams is still the number 1 quarterback within the draft. I think there's no question about that. but it's where Byron Murphy and DeAndre Baker will go. I think they both have aspects that make them high picks, but at the same time, I still see them as Greedy going first, DeAndre Baker going second, and Murphy going third in the cornerbacks. I don't know, it's hard to say. And safeties, I'll be honest, nobody really stood out to me. The safeties is probably one of the weakest classes in the draft compared to like last year when you had Minkah Fitzpatrick and Derwin James, where you have immediate impact players. Deontay Thompson from Alabama didn't even work out. And it's really hard to say what will happen with the safeties, whether we get a late first rounder or whether they drop. It's hard to tell. But that was day 4. So overall, this draft is going to be hard to tell who we're going to wear. Usually we see the top 10 as, you kind of know who's going to go where. But, there's that question with Kyler Murray. Where's Montez Sweat going to go now? Is DK Metcalf going to go ahead of Marquise Goodwin? I don't know. But it seems if you have a top 15 pick, you're going to get an immediate impact player who's going to change your team. If you ask me, Nick Bosa is still the number 1 pick. But, it's that question with Kyler Murray. Will he go first? What will he do at his pro day? It's so hard to tell because this draft class is so deep in everything except, maybe some defensive backs. This is such a good draft. So that was the first edition of Futbol or Futbol. In the next few episodes, I will be coming out with a mock draft for the 2019 NFL Draft. Stay tuned for that. I thank you for listening and hope you enjoyed.